Okay, continuing on page 115, we're going to be adding stuff to this linear layout. And we'll be adding a label, which is a text view. So I'm just going to grab this guy and drop him on here. Doink! And he consumed the entire width. And I wasn't necessarily thinking that because I told it I want these things to stack horizontally. Okay, then I'm going to grab a button and drop him on here. And now it's stacked the way I expected it. Okay, cool. Now, remember we talked about this linear layout guy, how he consumed all the space? And I wanted to change him to tell it that I wanted to shrink to fit the content, but I didn't have any content. Well, now I do. Okay. So now that I'm on the linear layout, I'm going to go to the attributes. And I'm going to basically tell it that my layout height is not match the parent. It's wrap around the content. Did you see how when I did that, it went, okay, isn't that pretty cool? All right, so we're going to do another one just like that. Except maybe this time what I'll do is I'll copy and paste from XML. I mean, you clearly could just drag more stuff on there. Okay, that works. But just for the heck of it, I'm going to go in here and just copy the XML file. So I want this entire thing, the linear layout plus the text view plus the button. Okay, so I'm going to do a copy. And I'm going to do a paste. And of course, it's going to complain that, wah! Well, I just have to change some of these guys. I'll make this one like button number 3. Okay, so that makes sense, right? Let's go back to the designer. And they look pretty good. I mean, it looks halfway decent. But I'm going to put some more text in the button just for the heck of it. Again, I guess this time I'm going to do it with the attribute rather than the XML. So, come on, behave. Go to attributes. Come on. There. And the text, instead of text just being button, I'm going to make it bigger. You know, text. How about, I don't know, button with more. Something. Okay. So now look at our view. Well, that doesn't look right because, you know, the things are kind of squashed and I just don't like it being squashed. I want them to line up just as if this was like a form where you have, you know, a fixed width on the right and a fixed width on the left and everything lines up. Well, they don't line up very well now, do they? Okay. So I'm going to experiment with a interesting thing called weights. First thing I'm going to try, if I can get away with it, is I'm going to set the weight for this to be 50-50, which means I want it to be in the middle. Okay, so again, I'm going to go to the XML file. It's just okay. So this one says weight 1, but weight 1, and that means that each one of these things should have the same amount of weight. Okay, that kind of sort of makes sense. The problem is if I wanted to have this thing shift over a bit, it doesn't look like it's behaving, right? The weight guy, the layout weight guy, doesn't seem to make it. I mean, I could go here and say, for example, I want this to be 0.5. Actually, these numbers are quite arbitrary. When I do weights, I tend to make it so that the sum of the weights is 1. You don't have to do that. Making it 0.5 is not going to change it at all. Okay, I'm just saying, let's go back to the design. No, it didn't change anything at all. Okay, that's the way I do it. It's just because I want the weight to kind of make sense. Let's see if we can control the weight a little bit. Okay, so for the text, I'm going to say 0.7 and 0.3. Okay, let's just see what that does. Okay, and ooh, that was pretty good. I mean, I kind of got it about right. I kind of sort of like that one. So let's do that on the other one. We'll make this one 0.7. And we'll make this one 0.3. Okay, now let's go back to the design. And, well, that didn't work the way I expected it. Did I get those backwards? How did I do that? This is a weird thing that drives me nuts, okay? And I'll just tell you right off the bat, I honestly think this is a bug, but that's okay. But see where it says the width? I'm going to have to change the width of this guy to 0 pixels. And I'm going to change this guy to 0 pixels. And now, if I look at the design, it actually did what I told it to do. Okay? Now, honestly, I am not kidding you. I think this is the bug. Okay? So I want this one to, I don't know, how about 0.4 and 0.6? I mean, I'm just making this stuff up. Which means the vast majority of the stuff is going to be the button, right? 2/3 of it will be a button, and 40% of it's going to be the label, and 60% going to be the button. I don't know, that kind of. So I basically have to do this here as well to make these things line up. I have to go in and make this guy 0 dp, and then I pick 0.4, and then here I have to go and make this guy 0 dp. So the weights don't work the way you would expect them to work until you tell the machine, look, don't wrap around the contents, because that'll mess things up. I want you to ignore the contents and do what I tell you to do. So it's a two-step process. Giving it the weight number, which in this case 40% and 60%, plus telling it to ignore the automatically generated width. Okay, now this will work fairly nicely. So now they all line up. Hooray! Regardless of the amount of text there is. Okay, now I know that's a little confusing, and just let it sink in. So if you're going to use weights, you have to turn off the automatic width. Doesn't that make sense? If I'm saying I want 60% over here and 60% over here, I have to tell the machine I'm now responsible for calculating how wide that is. You no longer have that responsibility. So you go and tell it 0. And that tells the machine, whoa, hands off. I don't have anything to do with this. You, Mr. Programmer, gets to determine how wide this thing is. Okay? Kind of makes sense? Okay. So there's a lot of stuff on page 118, but to tell you the truth, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to have you go through and do all that stuff. They talk about padding, the amount of space between things. Okay, so padding and margin. Margin is how much space is there between the text and the edge of the button. Okay? So for example, I'm going to run this so I can actually see it. Oh, it's already running. Well, I'll start it over again. Okay. So what if I wanted an awful lot more space between the edge of the button and the word button? Okay? That would be called margin. Okay? That's margin. If I wanted to have amount of, like, see how this button is actually touching the right-hand edge? Okay? If I didn't like that, that would be called padding. So padding is on the outside of the button. Margin is on the inside of the button. So I want to scoot over the button so it's not actually touching, because that looks a little ugly. Maybe the text view, I need to nudge him over too. So I want to change the margin or the padding. I want to change the padding to the right on those guys. So I'm going to grab the button. I think I could probably click on the button successfully here and get the attributes. And so I'm just going to go down here to where the margin and padding is. Just way down here to P for padding. I tell you the truth, I'm going to go back to the code. I'm just telling you. So where my button is, which is right here, I'm not going to do them both. I just find a spot, okay, and then start typing. So I can say Android dot, and then padding, I want the padding right. And then I'm going to have to give it number of pixels. I'm going to say 5. And there's a thing called DP. Now, I haven't really talked about that, but we have it coming up. DP is basically, talks about display density independent pixels. Trust me, we'll come back to that. So I added padding. I only did it on one of them, but that's beside the point. Let's see if we can see the difference for padding. Okay. I got it. I'm sorry. The padding here doesn't matter because I set up with the horizontal. if I wanted to change the padding on the layout, not the button, the layout, then I could do that. Okay, so let me just copy and paste that. I ended up putting it on the button, and what I really wanted to do was to put it on the layout itself. Okay. Phew. Okay, let's try that again. And ta-da! Okay, cool. Makes sense? All right. So layout and padding, those are two concepts here. So again, follow the stuff on page 118. I'm not going to do it. Wiring up the event handler. Basically, we've done this before. I guess I'll go through one of them. Okay. So I'm going to stop my guy. I'm going to do this from the designer, just for the heck of it. So I'm going to click on the first button. And one of the things that typically show up is a thing called common attributes. On click. And here I give it the name of a method, which I'm going to call mine load constraint layout. Load constraint layout. Okay, that's the name of a method, which we don't have, but I can fix that. So I'm going to go back here to main activity, and I need to build me one of these things. So this is going to be, public void load constraint layout. It's going to take view as a guy. Okay, and of course it's going to say, what are you talking about? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my set content view. Set content view is going to be this r dot layout dot, I guess the original activity one. Okay, so I've wired my button. So let's check it out. Let's make sure it works. I don't really remember what button I wired, but we'll find out in just a moment. Was it this one? Yes, it was. Hooray! Okay, cool. All right. So the rest of the chapter is talking about like adding a calendar view and doing a table layout. Table layouts are not that complicated. I'm going to start you on a table layout, but I'm not going to spend that much time and energy on it. Okay, so I'm going to stop my guy. I'm going to go back to here, and we're going to build us a brand new layout. And I'm going to go ahead and just start typing. I kind of like giving this thing the table layout, and that way it kind of sort of knows what's going on. And I'm going to call this one, I don't know, what does the book call it? Table, yeah, my table layout. Okay, fine. My table layout. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a table row to our layout. Now, you might spend a couple of times trying to find table row, and sometimes it's hard to find. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the little search button and just start typing, table until you can find the row guy. Now, I find it easier to drop this guy on the component tree. Just saying. Let's put a couple of rows in there. Now, when you drop a row, can you see the little arrow moving? This would put a row under a row. I don't want that. I want the row to be under the table layout. So now I have two rows. Okay, so what goes inside a table row? Ooh. So a table row can have practically anything. I'm going to go ahead and just put a text view in there. So again, watch how I'm dropping this guy to make sure that I'm going to do another one. Make sure when you're dropping this guy, you're putting them in the right location. So now I have two rows, with the first row has two columns. Okay? See how that kind of sort of works? So I'm building, again, watch where I'm dropping, because it's kind of sort of important here. I'm dropping it underneath there. So now I have two rows with two columns each. Okay? So I'm just going to zoom in on this so I can see it a little bit better. But there it are, the two text views, 2 rows, 2 columns. Okay, that making sense? Okay, that's about it for this chapter. I'm going to let you do all the rest of it yourself. See you guys again in the next chapter.